Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So as I mentioned at the end of my last deck profile, the Monadium one, I definitely wanted to get into some more pile decks for the remainder of the season, especially synchro-focused ones. What, Lex playing synchro-focused pile decks? No, never. So I decided to start off with Superheavy Samurai Centur-Ion. As I said before earlier in the season as well, while playing Superheavy Samurai, I did want to try this engine out in a number of different decks, and Centur-Ion was the first one. I actually started noticing this deck. It kind of came on my radar last season. I would see it with a pretty low popularity rating down towards the bottom of like the untapped meta tier list, right? But the combination alone definitely piqued my interest, and while last season the win rate wasn't too impressive, it's actually looking pretty solid this season. I think about 53-ish%. Again, really low popularity rating, but still I think that is quite cool. And indeed, the two archetypes play very well together. Now, your first thought might be, when, you know, talking about splashing super heavy with other decks, like, you're playing spell and trap cards. How can you play super heavy while you're playing spell and trap cards? Well, the idea here is that we're really looking to use a super heavy engine on our first turn before we use any spell or trap cards, right? Because the super heavy samurai engine can not only set up very impressive negates like Baron de Fleur as well as the Borlode Savage Dragon, but on top of that, it can also pivot us into our Centur-Ion engine very easily. Because of course, all you need to do to set up Centur-Ion plays, even without your normal summon, is to simply be able to synchro for a level 12 synchro monster. If you do that, you could summon Auxilia. Auxilia can add the stand-up Centur-Ion. Stand-up Centur-Ion can place the Primera into the spell trap zone, and then you can special her to add, and then from there you can combo. Actually, you would want to go for Trudea, I think, right? Because then Trudea could bump the Primera into the spell trap, and then Primera can add Phalanx, and then you have set up not only the Auxilia Phalanx, but also another level 12 synchro for the opponent's turn. So yeah, it's pretty easy to weave Centur-Ion into actually a lot of different excuse me, a lot of different synchro decks. I know in my Adventure Synchron deck profile, someone in the comments was talking about using Centur-Ion with the Synchron deck, which I think is really, really cool. So but yeah, so even though, like, again, we're playing the spell and trap cards, like I said, the super heavy plays are often going to be what starts us off. And also, to be honest, we play a lot of turns just without naturally putting spell or trap cards in the graveyard anyway, right? Like, stand-up Centur-Ion is pretty much always going to be part of our combo line, but it's also a field spell, meaning it is, of course, going to stay on the field. So unless you, like, need Emblema Oath to go into your plays, or you have to call by or cross out to, or maybe triple attack in response to a hand trap, right? You're not really going to be putting spell and trap cards in the grave on turn 1, right? There is, of course, also the Phalanx, but if you're willing to wait on one of your points of interaction, the Phalanx, for a little bit, you could even go into the next turn without any spell or trap cards in the graveyard, and then do super heavy stuff on the follow-up. It also is worth noting that there are a number of super heavy effects that don't even require you to have 0 spell or trap cards. One of the most prominent ones is going to be the Soul Piercer, right? Soul Piercer is just when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, no other conditions. So as long as you're able to keep recycling this, you can still keep searching on it even after you've put a spell or trap card in the graveyard. The Soul Piercer effect is also another very relevant one that you can activate without having to have 0 spell or trap cards in the graveyard. So, of course, the Motorbike Search, the Scales Summon, and I think pretty much all of Wakaushi's effects do require you to have 0 spell or traps, but, you know, these aren't nothing, and in fact, I believe if I recall correctly, you are going to see me play a game where I'm making Super Heavy Samurai plays with these cards, even though I have a spell in the graveyard, so. Alright, what else is there to really say about this deck? I mean, honestly, if you've played both, this is one of those pile decks where you don't really need to know that many unique lines. If you've played both Super Heavy and Centur-Ion, honestly, you can probably figure this deck out. Again, as long as you're making sure to use your 12 summon to go into the Auxilia. As far as our extra deck goes, we are on the Tilting Entertainment, which you do already play in Super Heavy sometimes. This is a level 8 that can basically summon out the Wakaushi from the extra deck, right? So that means that this is a level 8 that can then turn into a level 12. So there are some situations where that will definitely come up, especially trying to go into the Crimson Dragon and making sure that we end on that there. But At the same time, it's not like 100% needed. I never found myself summoning it, but it is a very nice option to have. It is also actually a way to go into your Centur-Ion line through your super heavy stuff, even if you get disrupted, right? Because even if you get, I guess it depends when you get disrupted, but it's not that hard to make a level 8 synchro on this deck, even like post Nib or something. And from there, you can just, Tilting Entertainment, grab back the Wakaushi, then go for a 12. That's Auxilia, boom. Now you've set up a Centur-Ion board. Actually, speaking of playing under Nib, these duels that are coming up, while they are going to be all pretty much going first games, one is a going second game, but it's kind of, we'll get into it when we get into it, but yeah, you might think that a deck like this has a lot of big weaknesses in the form of Maxi and Nibiru, but we're actually going to be playing through Maxi as well as Nibiru in these duels coming up, so it's not just about doing the big combo line. Of course, you do also have to be mindful of those kinds of hand traps, especially lingering ones or the board wipe of Nibiru. But like I said, we are going to be playing through multiple hand traps through these duels coming up here. So definitely look forward to that. Anything else in the extra I really need to talk about? Artemis is mostly just here to let you go into an SP, right, using a Link monster if you use the Primera here. Honestly, there are a number of things you could put in this extra deck. The Artemis is very optional. The Dweller is very optional. Honestly, even the Dissipator is very optional. I kind of have it here because not only can we make it off the Excel Stardust, but you could also, in theory, Crimson Dragon on Baron, but I never really found it coming up. And then, like I said before, Tilting Entertainment. Honestly, even the Warlord is very optional. I didn't really find myself summoning it, and in a build like this, like, yeah, in regular Super Heavy, you're going to be pretty consistently able to end on it. But in a build like this, we can only really make use of it if we're, like, doing the Scarecrow and Soul Piercer part of, like, that combo line, which that doesn't actually come up in every single hand. So, again, Warlord might seem, like, really obscene in a deck like this, but it's a very situational card in this kind of a deck. I could easily see a world where we cut it. So, again, if you're looking for flex spots in the extra, I'd say Warlord, Tilting Entertainment, Artemis, and Abyss Dweller are your flex spots. Baguska, I guess, is also kind of a flex spot, but it is also a good play to make under Maxi. And you might be thinking, oh, Lex said we're going to play under Maxi, so we're just going to make Baguska a lot, right? No, we're actually not going to make Baguska in a single one of these games. That said, I have definitely made Baguska while playing Super Heavy. It is very good for, having plays under the sea there, as I mentioned. As far as, like, starters and hand traps, that is the other thing I wanted to mention about this build. Even though this deck is 45 cards, it actually has, like, one of the best hand trap starter ratios I've seen of the decks we've played so far. So let's actually count them out. For hand traps, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 hand traps. And we also even have Triple Tack, which is, like, not a hand trap, but is kind of a disruption board breaker-ish tool. So debatably 15 like tools to help you play through your opponent's stuff, but I mean even 14 just hand traps alone for when you're going second is phenomenal. But the starter ratio, because again 45 cards might seem like quite a bit more than 40, but if you count the 1 card starters, those are going to be the Bikes is 3, Piercers 4, Primera is 7, Trudea is 10, Wakaushis are 13. Stand-up Centurions are 16, and then Emblema Oath makes 19. 19 one-card starters. 19 cards that can, at bare minimum, end you on a Centurion setup here. If not, additional, like, super heavy related stuff. So that's wild. That's actual, like, insanity for both sides of that ratio. And if you really wanted to, if you wanted to trim this down to, like, 42 cards, you could even do that and make your ratios that much more consistent. Although to go down to 42, I'd probably end up cutting Droll, which will reduce your hand traps. But yeah, great ratios for this deck. A lot of playability through Disruption, as I mentioned. Anyway, I've yapped on long enough about it. Let's go ahead and see some of the duels here. Alright, so these are going to be Duelist Cup games, and sadly, even though I played these games, like, within the last hour, I do not remember exactly who played what. So, alright, going to be going first for this one here, and we got a pretty good hand here. Well, actually, there is one little issue with this hand, and that's that we did open not only the Wakaushi, but our one Big Benki. And in order to activate the Wakaushi effect, you are going to have to place the Big Benki from the deck. So, not the most ideal here, but I'm still going to use Motorbike to go for Soul Piercer and place the Wakaushi in the Pend Zone, as well as the Big Benki. From there, I'm going to Pendulum Summon for the Soul Piercer and Centur-Ion Primera in hand. An opponent's going to throw out the Maxi now. I do think that this was a misplay, and while I know I've said a lot in the past that you shouldn't preempt Maxi, one of the times I am willing to make that exception is if my opponent has a setup Pentascale. Because, especially if it's like Big Benki, Wakaushi, like a Pentascale like this, you know they're pretty much just probably going to just Pentasummon right afterward, or maybe shortly afterward. So, that's a situation where I'm willing to take that risk in order to try to get out ahead of the opponent there. But obviously, I'm very glad my opponent did not do that here, so... Alright, Maxi is going to resolve, so as the Primera, we're going to search the stand-up Centur-Ion here. I'm going to use the Big Benki effect to add the Soul Peacemaker, then activate the field spell, and then discard that Soul Peacemaker in order to set up the Centur-Ion Gargoyle 2 in my spell trap zone. So what I've done here is I've set myself up for a couple of different options. If I wanted to go for a level 8 Synchro and get a search off the Soul Piercer by going into the Excel Stardust, you know, for the Motorbike, I could do that. Unfortunately, I really wanted to play regular Stardust Dragon, but I just could not quite find room in this extra deck. In hindsight, I definitely probably could have just cut like the Artemis for it, but that would have allowed me to go to a level 10 Synchro on the opponent's turn, but I could still sync 12, of course, using Gargoyle and the Primera. We also, of course, have the Phalanx as well, and as mentioned, we've given our opponent 0 draws off the Maxi, which is always ideal. Ah, that's right, they're on U-Bell. So here they're going to use the Nightmare Throne to add regular U-Bell, shuffling it back along with a Spirit to then go into the Phantom of U-Bell. So what I'm thinking at this stage in the game is that I'm in an extremely good spot. Excuse me, because let's say, for example, and here's what I thought they were going to do. I figured, okay, if you use Nightmare Throne for that, you're probably just about to normal summon Samsara D-Lotus, right? So let's say my opponent did that right now. Let's say they normal summon Samsara D-Lotus. What I could do in response to the summon is put on the chain link both Centur-Ion Gargoyle 2's effect as well as Centur-Ion Phalanx. Phantom of U-Bell cannot stop Gargoyle 2 because it's currently a continuous trap card. The Phalanx will banish the Phantom of U-Bell. The Gargoyle 2 will summon out. I can then, on a new chain link, before my opponent has a chance to use Samsara D-Lotus, activate the field spell effect because I special summoned, then sync Primera and Gargoyle into Legatia. Legatia would pop the D-Lotus, and I would get a draw on top of that. So that is what I was thinking was probably going to be the sequence that happened here. To my surprise, my opponent just passes. So I don't really know what was up with that Nightmare Throne search, but yeah, I mean, you know, it might seem like, oh, this is like a fallback board for getting Max Seed, and I mean it is, I'm not gonna lie, it definitely is, but just because it's a fallback board doesn't mean it has a lot that it can threaten, so. But here my opponent kind of bafflingly just doesn't really do anything, so I'm like, okay, cool. Gonna draw Wakaushi. I'm just gonna preempt the Phalanx on the Phantom, banish that. This will proc the Nightmare Throne effect, and then grab the Spirit of U-Bell. Was a little surprised they didn't summon it, but we do have to be mindful of that when we go to declare an attack, so. I'm going to go for the Excel Synchro Stardust here because I have that Motorbike in my graveyard. This will also proc the Soul Piercer effect. And also, I'm very glad that I did the chain links the way I did. You'll notice I did chain link 1 Excel Synchro Stardust, chain link 2 Soul Piercer, and you might think, but Hex, then your Soul Piercer is going to get Ash Blossomed, right? But I wasn't worried about my Soul Piercer getting Ash Blossomed, I was more worried about my Stardust Dragon getting Gamma'd, because while it's more likely for my opponent to have the Ash Blossom than the Gamma on the Stardust would be far more devastating than Ash Blossom on the Soul Piercer. That's why I chain blocked that way, and again, as you can see here, it very much paid off. Alright, so they get to summon these two. It doesn't really matter, I mean, it means I probably can't OTK, but at the same time, I'm in a pretty good situation here, so I don't even think I necessarily need to do that. Alright, I'm going to summon out the Gargoyle 2, and at this point my opponent concedes, but I was definitely far from done. I could have, of course, still done a number of things. I could have just normal summoned the Wakaushi, right? But I think, I don't know, I might have actually been a little more likely to activate the stand-up Centur-Ion effect. If I had one more card in hand, I could do both, and the plays would actually be insane there, but I think going for more Centur-Ion plays would be the better way to go. Yeah, so I'd probably just use stand-up Centur-Ion's effect to pitch the Wakaushi, place Primera in the spell trap. Oh, but I already special the Primera, so I wouldn't be able to do that. Well, either way, our opponent conceded, so we don't really have to put too much more thought into it. Again, even if we're not winning the duel that turn, which I actually don't think we would be, we'd still be in a very advantageous position. So, all right, let's go ahead and see our next game. All right, got another game here where I remember this is another game where we're going to have to deal with a Maxi that is going to resolve. So I think it resolves. I'm like very sure it does. So we'll figure it out. Going first again. Oh, actually, I do remember this hand. Okay. Alright, so we're going to lead with the Primera here. Not really having any super heavy plays, but that is completely fine because we're mainly a Centur-Ion deck. I guess if I had to pick one or the other, because we're not really dedicated. But they do resolve Maxi here. Yep, that's right. Because I remember thinking, like, oh, if I'd just been able to, like, if I'd opened, like, the stand-up or Emblema Oath instead of the Primera itself, I might have been able to Gamma the Maxi there. So, yeah, as you can see, we have to end on just Primera and Trudea here. We do give them one draw in doing so. And again, this might look like a very precarious situation for us, but I'm actually not feeling too bad, because I can still use stand-up to sync for Legatia for disruption on this turn, and I also have Valor and Maxi, and if they clear my board, then Gamma becomes live as well. So, well, speaking of Gamma, Omega is definitely another card you could play in this extra deck for the Gamma, and also because we're on Disfader too. Oh, it's D-Link, of course. So I see a Black Metal Dragon. Of course I'm going to throw out the Maxi here. One Maxi in turn deserves another, does it not? I'm going to let them Magnum Hut to banish their own Rebellion. That's totally fine with me. Not that I could stop it, to be fair, but... And then I'm going to go for the Legatia here. I'm going to pop the Magnum Hut with the Legatia, because even though this does give them... Oh, no, I'm not under Maxi anymore. Yeah, even though, like... You know, popping Magnum Hut here doesn't inherently do anything by itself, right? What it does do is it stops them from just using Magnum Hut to battle over my stuff. So, it also does put them in a bit of an awkward situation where if they do want to combo off under the Maxi, they're now going to have a harder time doing so, which means they might have to go out of their way for more summons, which would mean more draws for me. So, I will note that during the actual game itself, the opponent set a card, and then really sat and thought for a couple of seconds about whether they wanted to continue playing before going into the Striker. The Striker notably did not activate here. I was looking to Valor that, but it didn't activate, meaning I believe Boot Sector Launch E is going to be one of these remaining cards in hand. It's definitely worth noting. So, Black Metal Dragon's effect is going to activate here. They're going to go for the Red Eyes Darkness Metal, summoning that out, and when they activate the effect, I'm just going to throw out the Valor here, even though they are still under the Maxi. I have enough cards in hand, and I have follow-up plays because I have Trudea now, so I'm definitely cool with just stopping what they're doing. And then, yeah, as soon as we, you know, Valor the Red Eyes Darkness Metal, that pretty much spells it out for my opponent there, because now they've committed to giving me multiple draws, but now I've also stopped their plays, and they just don't really have anything to follow up with, especially considering the Boot Sector Launch is almost assuredly one of the remaining cards in hand there. I guess also, to be fair, I didn't need to top deck Trudea to have follow-up plays, because I had the stand-up Centur-Ion plus Legatia, so Legatia would have put Primera into the spell trap, and even if that didn't happen, the stand-up Centur-Ion could do it as well. So, multiple options, but that's one of the cool things about this deck. Anyway, got one last duel we're going to take a look at here before we finish off. And I do remember this one. This one's going to be against Pure, I believe it's Pure, Snake Eye. This is our going second game, but I will kind of throw an asterisk on it that, spoiler alert, our opponent's not going to do really much of anything on turn one. We did open a Droll here, which is nice, as well as multiple starters. But it's going to throw down the Divine Temple for Ash, and then just, yeah, ultimately end up passing. So, this is effectively another going first game. I'll basically kind of treat it as such, quote-unquote. Just because our opponent, like I said, didn't really make impactful plays. Although, I will say, while seeing an opening like this from the Snake Eye opponent is far better than them playing out their combo, this does likely mean they have some amount of hand traps here. Because they didn't open starters, they probably opened either extenders or hand traps, so definitely gotta watch out for that. Anyway, top decking the Wakaushi, great top deck. I can start with my super heavy plays here. Gonna go Wakaushi for Big Benki to summon. They're gonna Divine Temple for the Snake Eye Ash, Ash for Poplar. I'm of course not going to draw Mockbird here, because that would definitely be a death knell for my own deck, and I don't really care if they add OSS during my turn. It's not a big deal. Big Benki is going to add the Soul Piercer. So normally in Super Heavy, you would normal summon Soul Piercer here. But I wanted to save my normal just in case I needed it, in case I had some disruption. I needed to just go like normal Primera. So I opted to equip to the Wakaushi and link that instead to get the search and summon out the Scarecrow. Soul Piercer F is going to add the Motorbike because I already have the Soul Peacemaker. Motorbike is just cycling to put itself in the yard. Going to grab the Wakaushi. Soul Peacemaker is going to equip, and then I'm going to use Soul Peacemaker to bring back the Soul Piercer. I will admit I think I did kind of misplay here, because I end up going for the Soul Piercer F for Scales. Normally you would want to Scales back the Soul Piercer, but I Scales back the Motorbike here instead. And I don't know, if I had used my normal summon on like Primera, I could have like synced for 8 and then brought this back and then gone for Baron, and then... Would that have worked? No, because then this would still be... No, because Soul Peacemaker was equipped to the Scarecrow. Never mind. So yeah, that would have worked. That would have worked. Yeah. So I should have done it like that, I think. Just use my normal summon at this point. But my opponent does have a Royal Nibiru. Now, that looks super scary, but it's actually completely fine. I can play 100% through this, so... Because again, I haven't used my normal yet. I still have a ton of Superheavy cards, or Centur-Ion cards in hand, rather. But even if I had used my normal summon, it wouldn't matter, because I could still just do my Pentascale here, and then Pen summon a whole bunch of monsters, the Wakaushi in the extra, Primera, Trudea, Wakaushi in hand, and that's where my opponent's done. I did think it odd that my opponent didn't concede once I started making plays, because I did kind of notice that, like, okay, they don't really seem to have any hand traps. They weren't getting past priority until they dropped the Nibiru. To be fair, my opponent did have to drop Nibiru when they did, because I had a level 2 tuner and then 2 level 4 non-tuners, meaning I could just go straight to Baron de Fleur, which was exactly my plan. So, they nibbed at the right moment. It just did not end up being nearly enough to stop us from winning there. So, yeah. Superheavy Centur-Ion loved this particular pile deck. Thanks to whoever suggested it in the comments. I was already kind of thinking about covering it, but I saw somebody suggest it, and I was like, you know what, I think I will actually play that one. So, thanks for that. And yeah, that'll do it for this one. Let's go ahead and move on to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Just want to give you a huge thanks for watching all the way to the very end of the video. Believe it or not, that is actually one of the best ways that you can support the channel, is by watching the videos in their entirety. But there are many ways in which you can support the channel if you are so interested. The names that you're seeing on screen here, I gotta give an extra special thanks to, because these are people who have chosen to either become a member on YouTube, which if you're interested you can do as well via the join button next to the subscribe button down there, or have signed up over on Patreon and become members there. Link to that is going to be in the description below. Without the support that is being offered by, again, all the people that you're seeing on screen right here, I would not be able to take the time to dedicate to uploading daily YouTube videos. So thank you so very much. But there are also other ways you can support as well. Again, link to the description below. If you like my deck tracker that you'll see in a lot of my videos, the Untapped Companion, you can download that for free, and if you use my affiliate link down there, then that also goes a long way towards supporting the channel. That's, again, free. So is subscribing here on YouTube. That's also free and a huge way to support. You can also check out Twitch, once again linked in the description below. Following and subscribing over there will not only support as well, but also give you notifications of when I go live if you want to catch some of the live streams. But really, no matter how you choose to support, it all adds up, and it all definitely means the world. So thank you, each and every one of you. For now, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out. But more than that, I'm hoping that you have a fantastic day.